Okay, with Simone Kisiel, Changemakers, The Global Race to Save Our Seas is the short film. It's 14 minutes long. And you basically, this is a great film. I just love this documentary so much. And you want us to watch, you leave us wanting to watch more. And I think is that sort of your point? You got to make it
Yes.
14 minutes. You're like, all right, you like this, then maybe you'll want some more from me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like a taste of flavor of this. And we see the WTO fisheries agreement as sort of a case study in a larger discussion and journey in looking at multilateral organizations and why change is so hard to make. So the thing that I always think about is the science has been so clear for so long. And the solutions that the science suggests for climate change, for overfishing, for all the different issues that we're combating has been so clear for so long. Why can't we make change when it's so obvious what we need to do? And so this was like the first little taste of what is happening here and why can't we make the change that we all know we need to make?
And there's a lot, I guess there's a one answer to that question, I guess, right?
So, I mean, my personal answer is like capitalism, it's greed.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we were willing as a collective, as a people, to do what was right and best for everybody, we wouldn't even be having this discussion right now. In regards to any of these things, we would just do the right thing. Because again, the science is clear, the solutions are clear, but there's different interests at stake, and they're primarily monetary.
Well, yeah, from like just from a capitalistic public trading company standpoint, every quarter they're kind of told to make a profit. So if you kind of pull away from something at that thread and you're saying, well, you can't make a profit this quarter, then they're not going to really agree with that, I guess, right? So
Yeah. And it's insidious. It's everywhere. Like we see this not just in multilateral organizations, but just in like companies that are absolutely killing it. Like I'm not gonna say anything negative about Netflix, but I will say that their push to make more revenue year over year, quarter over quarter, is what's driving the opposite of from happening. So if we could be satisfied with like a lot instead of an excessive amount, I think across the board things would be different.
yeah, and well, but then from a human standpoint, we only solve issues when we really need to, I guess, right? So
When it's affecting us, when it is affecting us, or
yeah.
it's affecting, well, actually, I would say more specifically when it's affecting our bottom line. Because who's us? I mean, we already know that millions of people in the global south are being affected by the lack of accessibility to the fish that they've always had access to that are in their waters. And we know that. So it's affecting us, but it's not affecting our bottom line yet, I guess, as the global north. And I guess we don't care as much about people needing food and income.
So I don't know if this is a coincidence or there's a trend happening, but we've shown a lot of films about. I know this your film is more about than this, but it's about the fishing industry. And I just talked to someone the other day, an Italian documentary filmmaker, and what's happening is that I don't even know if you know this, but the crabs that were in Maryland, New England area have ventured over to the Mediterranean Sea in Italy, and now they're eating the fish that the fishermen in Italy basically usually grab, right? So the fishermen are now basically trying to catch the crab in the sea that's in their Mediterranean Sea, and now they're changing they're trying to get like chefs in like restaurants to make dishes about crabs because they have so many crabs in the sea.
Well, I did not know that. I'm from Maryland originally, and so Maryland crabs are like,
Yeah.
I have two friends with Old Bay tattoos. That's how Maryland I am.
Okay.
And I had no idea that the crabs were migrating. Do they know why? Is it an environmental thing, or
It's an
they
environmental thing. Yeah. It's an
so that
environmental thing.
something's
I don't
not
know the
working in
specifics,
Maryland?
but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. That's crazy. And it's a perfect example of needing to utilize what we have access to, and then also losing what we have access to. The people of Maryland are losing their crabs.
Yeah.
And now the people in Italy are gaining crabs, but
But they're
that
losing their fishing because the crabs are eating
exactly.
their fish.
So that shift in that ecosystem is going to cause problems. It's going to cause
Well, it is. Yeah.
tensions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in layman's terms, it's messed up, basically.
Yeah. When you introduce an outside like predator, things die.
Yeah. So, but the fishing industry is this huge billion-dollar industry, right? Like, there's just even news about Red Lobster in the news, as per this podcast, where like they're shutting down, they're shutting down like franchises because they don't have enough fish, I guess, right?
Right. Yeah. And so like that's kind of the first in-world evidence I've ever seen in like sort of the global north, like American, like UK area of like impact. Like obviously I live in the New York area, so I don't have a lot of friends and family who like are fishermen by trade. So that is not a thing that like I would be affected by, or I would personally notice like boots on the ground where I live. But everybody seems to be very upset that Red Lobster is closing, and so it's interesting that 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 first bit of actual impact on us is causing a big stir when this has been an issue for a long time. It's just we're just now experiencing it because of how it's been set up and because of the way that we have priced fish and been able to do that because of subsidies. If we were to not use subsidies the way that my film sort of argues, the price of fish in North America would go up by a lot.
Yeah.
But it would be because of equity in how we get our food. And so I think that's worth the price.
Okay, I want to talk about the making of your film because it's
Right.
you're such great filmmaking here. Like the editing from like you're kind of splicing, you're making a visual story. Like it's like you're in you're kind of splicing in these like celebrities. You got Ted Danson plus like the experts at the same time, and you're just the movie just keeps moving. It doesn't stop moving, and you just give us this amazing visual experience at the beginning of your film with the animation, and there's like that sequence of like the fishermen. You got the fishermen in the silhouette, and they're like fishing into the. It's just amazing, like the way how you did this film. I'm just curious about the process in editing. Like I'm sure you grabbed footage and you kind of had an idea of what you wanted to tell, but did you always have this vision in your mind when you were making the film? Like,
No, no. I'm primarily a narrative fiction filmmaker. And so my big goal when I'm making documentaries is to make something that is as dry and unpalatable as looking at the history and the effect of fisheries subsidies, kind of like a sexier, more interesting topic. And that's, I mean, other than solving the lack of fish in the global south and the general issues we have around climate, being able to make these topics interesting or just palatable to the general public is one of my favorite challenges. So that intro, that montage that you talked about, that was sort of visually stunning, and it was supposed to speak to us in a human way and sort of place the general concept of like fisheries subsidies in the context of change across time.
yeah,
So it's great to hear that was effective. It took a long time to get to that, and it wasn't just my film. It was I worked with two amazing partners, a producer Jade Lovell and a writer Rebecca Rhodes, and we worked really hard together to generate that thing. We there was a lot of different iterations, and the one we landed on, I think, is effective. I'm glad you agree.
did you have the narration like written, like you started writing it in post-production, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so we put together the narrative of the story based on what the scientists and the activists were saying, and then we sort of filled in the gaps of the story that we were trying to tell with the narration. So the narration was the VO was the last thing to be finished, because every single time we scooched something around or moved something, or we were like that the way she's saying that isn't quite the scientific way, and so we were like riding the border between what is accurate and what is compelling. And so yeah, that was the last piece that was sort of slotted in to make it all kind of work together.
And then you had to find like all the stock footage, I guess, right? Or like that you use like the great touch with the commercials, like the starfish. This is my generation, so I remember these like the McDonald's kind of like fillet of fish, and you kind of use the old TV as like that's a really great touch.
That was so much fun to edit, and so much fun to look for those videos. When I saw the one, I think it was a McDonald's one, I was like, did you know that that fish is the fast food of the sea? Like it's just amazing how far it's come. But no, the way that we use that old footage, I think, is really important because it's got nostalgia attached to it that's legitimate. It's like it's good and is right, but it's also like points to a thing that we've done that's not necessarily good.
And then then like a few minutes in, you brought, what's her name? Shantae. I want to get her name.
Shantae Davis, yes, this absolutely incredible young activist who's at Duke. I think she's going into her last year now. She is, I mean, completely brilliant. And I think it is a pleasure to know somebody and to be able to support somebody who I think is going to change the world for the better.
There's a whole movie about her.
I know. I
Yeah,
mean, I have like a 3 hour long interview with her, and my film is 14 minutes. She's probably makes up like a minute and a half of it. Like I
yeah.
have, this woman is incredible. And it's, I mean, most people that I talk to for this film have their own story to tell that's worthy of a whole short film. But Shantae is, she's a rising star. I think she's already a star, but I think we're going to see her on the world stage, making an impact in this sector.
Because she has presence, if that makes sense. Even though
She
I
sure
just
does.
watched, you gave us a little bit, but you could tell that she jumps out on the screen.
Yeah, so I went to school as an actor first, and then I was sort of a teacher at NYU, and I worked with a ton of actors, and I've been running a production company since 2015, and we do a lot of work in narrative fiction, but I also work with scientists and financial experts and things, people who don't appear on camera,
Yeah,
and they are literally brilliant and experts at what they do, but when you point a camera at them,
yeah.
they don't know how to function. So I'm often like, what you just said is great, but it was about 7 sentences too long. So what if you said like, and I sort of massage it down for them and I direct them in what to say. And I will tell you that I would feed Shantae like a piece. Like I'd be like, can you say something about this? Maybe something like this. And she would on the spot with no preparation, knowing what I was going to ask, generate the most brilliant, concise, poignant responses. Like she had me in tears a number of times. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I've worked with CEOs, major, and she's one of the best on camera, articulate talents that I've ever come into
Yeah,
contact with.
you can tell. And she's young, and she should get into politics, to be honest with you, but
I think so. Either on the world stage as like as a negotiator in some kind of capacity for the environment, or I'd be like, she has my vote forever.
because we need that, like basically as you described, Barack Obama was very smart and brilliant, but he was a messenger, he was a communicator, and you need that's basically what you're saying. It's like people
Exactly.
could be geniuses, but they're not the greatest communicators, and we need as a society great communicators to kind of tell us things in very short, quick sentences, I guess, right?
Yes, unfortunately, doing the science is not enough.
Yeah.
Reading the data, coming to the conclusions, it's not enough. If they cannot be communicated to the public in a way that the public understands, then the science is being done in a vacuum and it doesn't matter. And she's like a perfect fit for
Yeah.
bridging the gap between what the science is saying and what it means, because the scientists don't often want to talk about what it means. They don't want to assign a value or a meaning to the data. They're like, this is what it shows, like this is the results, but they don't want to say how it affects us or what it means. And somebody like Shantae can really bridge that gap in an incredibly effective way.
We saw that with the pandemic, right? Where like these scientists were not the greatest communicators, and it just really confused everybody.
Yeah, so my partner in this film and my partner in all pretty much all the documentary work I do, Jade Lovell runs Reagency Labs, which is a science PR company. She originally worked for Weber Shandwick and was doing, we had clients like Pepsi and Mattel, and she realized that she has a superpower for communication and she wanted to use it for something that to her mattered. So she quit her high-level Weber Shandwick job and moved to the States and started a company. And so she's the marketing communication guru, and I'm the storyteller and filmmaker. So together we're able to sort of do what Shantae can do all on her own.
Did you go to Ghana to film some of the film?
No, so that was the only piece that we collected from outside of the WTO and our own footage. That was from the Environmental Justice Foundation, and we licensed that from them. They had gotten that footage, and it was the right footage, and it was exactly what we needed. We wanted to we had plans to shoot with somebody in Singapore and down at the water, but they had rained for like 3 weeks in a row, and we needed to finish the film. And when it's raining, the fishermen aren't out there to talk to. So we didn't access them. So we ended up with just licensing that piece from them.
So is there like, I know this is kind of a cliche question, but is there a bigger film here? Like, is there a feature in this, in the works for this film?
Yes, absolutely. So we created this just out of our own pockets, on our own dime, and we are hoping to partner with a series of entities in order to create the feature version. And again, it's going to be less about the actual fisheries subsidies and more about what it means and what it takes to make change, especially when we know what to do and we just for some reason won't do it. So we're in discussions with the Pew Charitable Trusts, and we've got a couple grant applications out. But we're in process on that because this film, a couple weeks ago, actually now, geez, a couple months ago, we were invited to Abu Dhabi, to the World Trade Organization's ministerial conference to screen the film for the delegates, because it's about their treaty, and they were like, we haven't tried art yet to get this to pass. Let's give that a go. So we shot a bunch of interviews and footage of the actual delegates and of fisher people who were sort of against the deal for certain reasons, and a lot of the Pacific nation countries. So we have all of this footage from the actual WTO ministerial conference in Abu Dhabi back in February, where they did not pass the agreement that got really close. So we've got all this new good stuff. And so it's like a perfect fodder for like, why doesn't multilateralism work better? We're actually asking the people who do it, what's wrong? Why can't you do this? And there's disparate answers. So we're hoping to secure some funding and some partnerships on that, so that we're not just paying out of pocket, because it's expensive to make documentaries. But yes, we're working on.
Yeah, well, I hope you get the funding. I hope you get everything you need. Because what you do in this film is that you simplify the complicated, right? So even the way you do the sequences with your charts, and basically you even tell us, like, simply said, this is economics 101. This is for anybody who doesn't understand, and most people don't, to be honest with you.
Well, we don't remember economics 101. Like, was there an economics 101 class that I missed in high
No, yeah.
school? Like, yeah, like nobody, if you didn't go to business school, then like nobody told you this, I guess. But
No,
so,
but don't get me started, because they teach math, but they don't teach like they don't teach you what a credit card is and what
how to balance a checkbook,
yeah.
how interest works.
Yeah. It's yeah, I have a whole debate with this guy who works, this guy in the neighborhood who works in finance, and like, and it's almost like they don't want people to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Like, why? Yeah, why am I learning how to do long division
Yeah.
when I don't understand how to grow my money?
Yeah. Because really only 10%, I've been thinking about this, only 10% of the world knows how money works.
Really?
That's my that no, there's no
Yeah.
stat. That's my theory, at least.
I mean, that tracks.
Yeah.
I know I have colleagues and friends who are consummate adults and are like, I don't really know how to manage money because no one ever told me.
Yeah. And there's all these things that you can do, like with like for your kids, and all these things that you can go to the bank that nobody knows about.
That nobody knows about.
Yeah.
It's insane. And that's part of the reason why we made this documentary, sort of non sequitur, but like,
Yeah.
for example, everybody knows of the Paris Climate Agreement, right? And that did almost nothing. It did almost nothing. And this agreement would be the first legally binding agreement ever. And nobody has ever heard of it. That's why we made the movie. We were like, this is ridiculous. The Captain Corporation over here, the World Trade Organization, is taking on sustainability, and people don't know, we have to tell them. So maybe the next movie is like, here's how money works.
Yeah. No, because well, like, listen, I know, like, because the way we were talked about the Duke, your famous Duke, she's going to be famous one day, because obviously kids, we're like, we don't have to get into politics or anything like that, but they seem to be passionate about subjects,
Yes.
and which is great, right? Sometimes you can debate whether their ideology, and there's lack of nuance, I guess, with their passion, but that's a whole other topic. But meaning that this is something that people can latch onto. This is something
Yeah.
that's important, right? This is the macro. You're talking about these micro, and I'm not trying to say war is good. I'm just saying these are micro conflicts. This is
Yep.
macro. This is the world,
Yeah.
right?
It's
This is
everybody.
our future. This is
Yeah.
their future.
If we do not address this by 2050, we'll be out of fish. Just
Yeah.
full stop. Just there will be no more fish. And half the world relies on fish for food and income. So I guess they'll die. Like,
People don't believe it. That's why.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So it's hard to it's hard to be like, here's a theoretical. In 25 years, everyone will, like the large amount of people there'll be a mass starvation. And they're like, man, it's like, I can't picture that. I don't understand that. I could just go to the grocery store. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So it's like trying to couch it in something that people understand. And that's really hard when you don't live in a fishing nation.
Yeah. And then the other side, or the argument would say, well, scientists have been wrong. Here's a long list of how science of history, how the scientists were wrong, right? So that's their
That's
argument.
true. Yep, science is constantly evolving and always learning, but they've been working on this agreement for 20 years. So the science has been consistent for a very, very long time. But I would like to say, as a science advocate and just a personal lover of science, scientists don't always have all the answers. That's why we need to work together. So for example, one of the scientists is part of my film, their suggestion is that people just don't fish for 10 years. They just don't fish for 10 years. And then in 10 years, the populations will have researched and then everybody can fish the way that they like. And like, that's a great solution, except for the people who rely on fish for food and income. What are they supposed to do for 10 years? So that works scientifically, but realistically, like logistically, what are those people are supposed to do for 10 years? So sometimes the solutions that are proposed are based on data and they're not based in reality. So
Yep.
that's why we need to come together with policymakers and scientists to figure out what the right solutions are that match.
And so that's how do you do that?
That's what this is my big question.
Yeah.
Why can't we get multilateralism to work? And it's because what the scientists are saying and what the politicians are saying, or the negotiators are saying, are at odds. We can't meet in the middle. And then like what like Norway wants is different from what like India wants,
Yeah.
as it should be, because Norway has been using fishery subsidies for 60, 50, 100 years. India is just starting to do that. So they're being punished for something that the global north has done that they've not done, but would greatly benefit them now if they were to do it. So it's like, one is like, you can't, and the other's like, well, you can. And so they're both not wrong.
Yeah.
So you have to negotiate, and that's what the World Trade Organization is trying to do. And just a little insight from the Stop Overfishing Coalition, which we're a part of. They are having a meeting this summer in Geneva, and they are hopeful that they'll be able to get the Fish One agreement to pass. So we thought we were going to have to wait 4 years for the next, or 2 years for the next conference, but
Yeah.
it's looking like this summer it's probably going to pass, and then we'll have that legally binding agreement in effect, and we'll stop some of this rampant overfishing and start addressing the problem. So it works slowly.
Yeah. Well, I think there needs to be like I brought up the kids because I think there needs to be sometimes in these situations, I could be wrong, is that they try to come up with facts fixes, right? Where there's not like a long-term plan.
Yes.
And basically what we've learned, that basically if people are passionate about something, policy changes, right?
Yeah.
So Biden made his speech about, about the war because basically people are basically protesting, right? So he had to react.
He had to address it. Yeah.
He had to address it. So we've learned that this is what I'm saying. Like we've learned that if people, get attached to something, we have something called social media that can kind of like help this along. I know it's not easy, but because it takes funding, right? It takes
Yes.
funding. But I think that's the answer. I'm an idealist, but basically meaning that but it can't just be done in a year. It's a long term. Put money into schools, put environment into schools, teach these kids about what's happening, right? Make sure that everybody has a class about it in high school, blah blah blah, right? So, and then it's seeped in their brain, and they're saying that's my theory at least.
I think you're right. I mean, if we don't arm people with the information and the knowledge and the tool set to make that kind of noise, then they won't know what to do. They won't make it. And I think you're right. There's a sort of threshold at which like the amount of noise and the amount of like protest and the amount of sort of feedback that we're getting, when we reach that threshold, the world at large has to respond.
Yep.
We saw with the Black Lives Matter movement and like the choice is removed for them. They have no choice but to respond. But it takes time. So it's like this is why this is so hard. It needs urgency and tenacity and patience. And like these are not really good bedfellows. And it reminds me of something one of the delegates said to me in an interview in Abu Dhabi. He said, my doctor says to me, you need to lose 30 kilos. And he's right. But if I were to go lose 30 kilos in the next 5 days, I'd die.
Yeah.
Because it's not how you do it.
Exactly.
So everybody needs, like, everybody's familiar probably with needing to lose a few kilos.
Yeah.
And we understand that you can't just go do it right now.
Yeah.
It takes time and patience and dedication and tenacity. And it's the same thing with changing systems, but we get tired. And when it's not about like looking in the mirror and being like, yeah, that looks better. Like there's nothing to point to. You can't be like, oh, look, the fish are coming back. So it's nebulous. It's not placed in, it's not concrete for us to look at and be like, that, I care about that. And I think that's the real battle with climate change issues in general, is how nebulous they are.
And there's not an exepic, what do you call it, that diet, whatever, for the environment.
Yeah, I can't even comment on that.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I'm using it as an analogy, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a long-term plan.
Yes.
Right? It's like,
Yes.
Anyways.
And it's collaborative. It has to involve not just the global north, it has to involve the whole world. We have to participate together in this. Obviously, some people are making more trouble. Some countries are making more trouble than others, obviously, but we all have to participate and agree that like this matters. And I think that that's the first step that we're actually still just sort of missing, just agreeing that this matters a lot.
And politicians are trying to get elected and they don't want to bring up this topic. And
exactly. So that's part of the reason why this summer they think they might be able to get it passed, because once a couple of these elections end, the politicians won't be taught, they won't need to sort of deal with this anymore. They'll be able to just sign the agreement. They're elected, it's fine. So like this agreement, which would help countless people, that would save the fish, is being held hostage by elections in various countries.
Including yours, right?
Including ours, yes, including the States, but also India and several others.
Yeah. Well, it's a great film. It really is. Like just from a filmmaking standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, it's just there's so like I watched it a couple of times and it's like there's so much in here. And it's not overwhelming, if that makes sense. We're like, you have so many interviews, so many different points of view, but it's not. We get it, but then it needs to be rewatched again because you give it so much information. But I'm breaking it down from a nerd filmmaking standpoint. It's just fantastic. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I love this festival, and I love talking to you about the film. It's an honor. Thank you.
What did you think about the audience? We send the audience to you. What did you think they had to say about the film?
I mean, I loved it. I always love to hear people saying that they felt like the film was effective, that they understood it, that they found it compelling, that they were inspired by it. Like they hit all of the keywords I was looking for. And like I said, we made this just on our own dime because we felt like it was important. And so it is validating and fulfilling and helpful to hear that it affects people and that it matters to them. So that getting that feedback from your audience was incredible.
One last question. It's sort of like a superficial question. How long did you have Ted Danson for?
So we actually got Ted Danson for a different project. I work with the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement, which is the Nobel Prize for the environment. Again, nobody knows about this, even though it's been in effect for 50 years. So last year, the laureates were Ted Danson was friends with the two laureates who actually appear in the film. And so we create the award ceremony video for the laureates who win this award. And the whole point of the Tyler Prize originally was to get celebrities involved in environmental science and make it sexier for the general public. So when the scientists have celebrity friends, we try to get them on camera. And Ted Danson was absolutely incredible. He is, imagine how nice you think he is. He's twice as nice. He's so cool. And we had him for, I think, 5 hours. He sat with us and
5 hours. Wow.
Yeah, he was absolutely brilliant. And then at the end, he wanted to stay and chat about the film and about Oceana, the company that he founded, and about the laureates and their science. And he's such a total dude. I can't say enough good things about Ted Danson.
That's so cool. It's so good to hear because I was brought up in the generation where Cheers was my favorite show. So it's good to hear. And then of course, Kirby Enthusiasm, he's fantastic on. So yeah,
So good.
keeps
He's
going.
been so good for so long.
Yeah.
It was such an honor to direct him, to talk to him, and to just meet him at all. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Make the feature film, please, and just like keep making movies. You're fantastic.
Thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate it. It's so good to talk to you.
Thanks.